Hello, hello.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, all right, Patrick. Great to have you on. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, what? Yeah, I'm excited to have you on my show. To be honest, like I know we've
Hey, I'm excited to be here, so I'm happy to hear that.
well, do you know, well, on my show, well, I mean, I try and put out as much content as I can without making my voice go hoarse, which it did do a few weeks ago. Yeah, like I do a chart show in the morning, and then I do like a news roundup in the afternoon show. And all the websites that I go through, I go on CoinGeek, Cointelegraph, and I often find myself coming across your articles on CoinGeek, and I have to say I thoroughly enjoy them. You know, they're just a really good read. So I was just like, right, you know, who is this guy? Let's get him on the show and have a chat. I mean, after all, what I would say is like literally everybody in BSV, particularly those people here right now, you know, collated together, we are effectively going to be the wealthiest and probably most influential group of people in the world. You know, so I always think it's worth building relations now, getting to know people.
No, for sure, and I'm really happy to hear that you read the articles and that you come across my articles. I appreciate the kind words there. And yeah, I think just the BSV community in general, it's such an intelligent and unique group. And I think what really differentiates us is the work that we are doing on chain, building real businesses. And it's not so much just, the other chains, I feel like there are some good projects, but they don't have longevity. Or when a lot of the projects are created, they don't have longevity in mind. And I feel like BSV, that's what really sets us apart. But I'm sure we'll get into that eventually. So I'll save it.
Yeah, yeah, great. Well, can you first tell? I mean, I was watching your the Bitstocks podcast that you did with Michael Hudson the other day, just getting sort of like a bit of background on you, but sort of like, could we sort of go right back to like where did you? Because to be a writer, you know, in a freelance writer for CoinGeek, you know, in the Bitcoin space, takes a unique set of probably like, you know, personality characteristics and interests. So, like, what were you like at school? Were you interested in sort of business studies, or you know, were you creative, or you know, were you sort of like relatively sort of defensive in your, you know, financial outlook on life? I mean, where did that all start? Did you have a paper round, being tight with your money or something, or what?
No, that's a really good question. I actually haven't heard anybody ask me that before. So I guess if we were to, rewind a bit and take it back to school, I think growing up, I always sort of had an interest in maybe it's just money in general. That's probably the best way to sum it up. And I think that probably stemmed from maybe, in school you're learning about, especially when you get to like more economics education, like you are learning about like, the JP Morgans and, just some of the bigger figures in the finance industry. But, on top of like the banking related work they did, I found just their entire lives pretty interesting. So I think I always sort of had my attention to banking, finance related stuff, business related stuff. So I guess, so growing up, I had my eye on that. And then when I did get to college, I went to Rutgers University. It's in New Brunswick, New Jersey. I studied financial economics. And I think that's probably what really hammered it in even more, or really focused my studies to learn more about that area of business in general, of maybe career in general. But at the same time, my minor was philosophy, but I had to take a lot of writing classes, I guess, to fulfill whatever requirements needed to be fulfilled. And I had my most fun in those writing classes where it was just a good time. I was able to learn a lot. I found the work really enjoyable. Like I was really just enjoying what I did in there. And I think, that all kind of came together to end up with a sort of a writing career where even in college, I was interested in doing freelance writing. And when it comes to blockchain and crypto, I think what drove me to do the freelance writing in that regard is like, one, I wanted to learn more myself. And I thought the best way to learn more would be to educate others. So I guess when you kind of rewind and take a look at all the different things that took place, like, it leads to this fine point that was blockchain digital currency writing.
Yeah. So just quickly then, while we're on the topic, can you tell everyone your stories how you actually became a freelance writer for CoinGeek? 'Cause, I mean, did they approach you? Did you approach them? Was it an advert you applied to? How did it happen?
Sure. So I think, to get to that point, we have to look back a bit. So when I was in college, like I said, and the first time I ever heard of Bitcoin, because this is important as
Was
well.
that 2013, wasn't it?
It was in 2013.
Wow.
I have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
pull it up right here because it's usually something I go through. But it was somebody from my town. I was a junior in high school at the time, and it was a Facebook post, and his Facebook post says, "So I have like 0.04 Bitcoin left in my wallet. With the exchange rate these days, that 4 bit cents is worth like $40. I think I'll throw a party." And then I'm looking at the comments too, and the comments on his post are like, "Man, you can almost buy a new video game with that." And they're going back and forth a bit. But like that was the first time I heard of it, and I was just like, "What is this guy talking about? What is Bitcoin?" And at that point in time, there was just a lot of material online to give anybody who was interested a really good start in learning more about it. The guy had already bought the Bitcoin pizza for 10,000 Bitcoin. The darknet market stuff was happening, so there was a lot of conversation around that.
Right.
And from there, I just kept my eye on it. I still had that interest, like I said, money, banking, finance. It amazed me how the price changed so rapidly. Ethereum came into the mix like 2 years later. That was also something I kept my eye on. But I wanted to educate others. So when I did get to school, I was a college student who needed like a little spare cash. And I'm like, writing is something I enjoy. I enjoy these classes. I enjoy the banking finance kind of thing. Let me see. And I think I did feel like I knew a little bit more about blockchain and digital currency compared to others at the time, because not many people were talking about it at all at the time. It was really hard to come by. I guess maybe just in the area that I'm from New Jersey, it was really hard to come by somebody who you could, be like, "Hey man, have you been keeping your eye on Bitcoin?" At that point in time, a lot of people were like, "No, what's Bitcoin? What are you talking about?" So I wanted to teach.
Did you buy any in 2013?
I'm trying to think. I don't think I didn't have any.
Surely you would have remembered if you did.
Yeah, I would have known, man. I would have known. I didn't have any in 2013. Maybe the first time when what happened? It's when I did start the freelance writing. They paid me out in Bitcoin. It was a small amount, but I was getting paid out in Bitcoin. So when I wanted to educate others,
That's amazing.
I began looking online for blockchain digital currency publication that I could do writing for. Right. And eventually I found coinidle.com. And I believe CoinIdle was created by an individual who used to be doing work with Cointelegraph, and then he kind of spun off to do his own thing. That's why if you look at CoinIdle, the art style is pretty similar to Cointelegraph. And many people find like their thumbnail images very unique because, they are very original, very, their own thing. Nobody else really does that. So I was writing for CoinIdle from maybe 2016 to 2017.
Right.
After that, I was like, what, CoinIdle was really good, but I want to see what else, who else I can write for. CoinIdle's great, but I would like to write for a publication that's a little bit bigger than this. Made my way to Cointelegraph. Was doing a lot of work with Cointelegraph from 2017 to maybe early 2019. Right. Wow. And then, during that era is kind of like when the whole crypto mania thing happened. Yeah. When, all sorts of digital currencies rocketed here, there, wherever.
Great time to be a writer. never a dull moment at that time. Wow.
There was never a dull moment. Like you said, SegWit was taking place. That was something new. There was all this sort of stuff happening with like Ethereum improvement proposals. Like that was something relatively new. But during that era, I had the little bit of Bitcoin that I had from writing from these publications and getting payouts like that. And I wanted to move it, I think, from one wallet to another wallet. And I'm still a college student at this time. It was probably late 2017, early 2018. And when I go to move it, I'm like, whoa, like the fee's $143. Like I'm not even trying to move that much. Like takes out such a big chunk of what I'm trying to do. So then I went online and I complained, like, man, it really costs this much to move Bitcoin from one wallet to another wallet of yours. Yeah. And then somebody reached out to me and they're like, hey, man, like maybe you want to look at Bitcoin SV. Like same thing. The transaction fees are so much lower and you could do so much more on it. So then I think I really began getting immersed in the BSV community there.
So did you miss the hash war?
The hash war. So we're talking about when BCH split off from BTC, or that's what we're talking about?
No, the hash war was BCH BSV.
Right. So when it comes to that, my big leap was from BTC to BSV.
Wow, you missed it all.
I spent no time on BCH. So by the time that I really immersed myself in BSV and what was going on in Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, like I totally kind of I peripherally knew of everything happening, and I know there was like live streams the day the hash war.
Were you not writing about it or anything?
I was not covering it at the time, so let me see.
That's outrageous.
Yeah, I don't know how that sort of happened or like why it wasn't on my radar like that, or maybe just somebody else was covering it. But like, yeah, I was never immersed in BCH, so like Bitcoin Cash stuff, like never really had an awareness of what went on there. And the first time I even met somebody in person when we were talking like blockchain digital currency stuff, and they're like, yeah, man, like BCH is my favorite. Like that was probably like 2019. And I was just like, whoa, like I've never met anyone who said that to me before. That was unique and interesting to me. But yeah, you know, the whole hash war thing, didn't have my eye on it. Went directly from BTC to BSV. And I feel like for that reason, it gave me a relatively unique perspective that maybe a lot of people who did do the whole transition from BTC to BCH to BSV never really had for themselves.
All right. Well, can we just rewind a little bit there? So what I'm sort of getting from you, do you think, is this quite common in the entire, well, we'll call it crypto space because they're all shitcoins anyway. There's only Bitcoin, which is the original protocol, and then all the other cryptocurrencies, which are shitcoins. You know, when I was getting into this thing, I literally, you know, when I found places like, like CoinMarketCap, and I suddenly saw all these things listed with all these like futuristic logos on and stuff like that, I was just like, oh my God, where the hell do I start? You know, with all of this. And I literally went through absolutely everything to try and get to, I mean, now I sort of realize it's my personality type to sort of get right to the bottom, like to the nitty gritty of it. And I didn't leave any shitcoin unturned. I went through absolutely everything because I thought I was so far behind. Everybody seemed to be talking about them all, and they all knew loads of stuff, you know, and it's quite, because I went through that process and I was learning all, I find it quite strange now when I hear BTCs that have been in the game like longer than me, you know, not knowing anything about these shitcoins. It's literally almost like they're blinkered, because I was just like, I can't afford to miss anything here. You know, there's something going on with, you know, BTC, and they're talking about splits, and like there's, you know, what am I missing here? What are all these things? I mean, I understand that, you know, securities on the equities in the stock market are stocks of companies, and then you find out what market the company is in, you know, their board of directors, what their goal is, what products they've got coming out. Yeah, there was none of that with any of these things, so I had to study it all. But even you as a writer, did you not study all these other things that were listed?
So I think for me, the thing was that from the jump, I just thought a lot of them weren't worth time and energy. You know, I would see things like Dentacoin, a coin for dentists, and I was just like, yeah, you know, I was kind of just like, what is this? Like, this isn't anything. And then I guess at that point in time too, you know, there were all like,
yeah, but is it
the
not
Telegram
worth writing
group
about though? I mean, like, you know, Dentacoin, surely it's just like, hold on a minute, like there must be a load of shit to write about it, because it is a load of shit.
Well, I think the thing is, in the process, I was able to go through white papers and learn a lot about what was happening. But some things really just, I just didn't think they had a future. I remember one thing in particular, I forget what the coin was called, but like they were looking to do something with like airlines, where like maybe instead of paying with your fiat currency, you paid with this token for the airlines. And then somebody was telling me like how cool it was and that I should take a look at it. And I'm like, you know, I hear what you're saying, but the thing is like, and I think what's important is the way I always thought of it is like, hey, what would my neighbors think about this? Like, how would my parents think of this? How would my grandmother think of this? Like, these
proof of social media.
Well, the thing is, I just think those groups of people were just like, would be like, Patrick, we have our US dollar to buy airline tickets, which we've done our entire life. Like, why are you making my life more difficult telling me to use the US dollar to buy the aviation coin to spend it at the airline when I could just use my US dollar and spend it on the airline, and that's always worked for me, and it's going to continue working. So I think I saw projects like that, and I guess, you know, Dentacoin probably falls in the same thing. Why would I pay my dentist with Dentacoin when I can pay my dentist with US dollars, and it always worked? And I think for that reason, I didn't give those weird sort of projects like much attention. and some of it was just extremely esoteric, where like the stuff they were trying to do, like maybe it sounded futuristic, maybe it was just a collection of buzzwords, but like I don't know, I just didn't think a lot of those projects would exist into the future, and they didn't. But I will say this, there were a variety of coins and tokens, and I guess I kind of looked at like maybe like a big five. I looked at BTC at the time, I looked at Ethereum at the time, Litecoin was on my radar, Ripple was on my radar at the time.
Yeah.
Those are like a big four where like, news was coming out. What a lot of them were doing seemed sensible, or seemed like, they really were trying to innovate. And it just didn't seem at the time, it wasn't this money grab kind of thing. It was just like a real sort of innovation play. Since then, I think a lot has changed with a lot of those coins. And that, most of them have kind of faded into, or not, they didn't fade into nothingness, but like they haven't improved since then, I guess like BTC today versus BTC at that point in time, like not much has happened in a way that would really make it progress. So I think, that's the view I had of it at the time. So like I wasn't on like Bitrex looking at number 150 token,
I was.
That was kind of nonsense to me. It was all kind of nonsense to me.
Right. And so were you literally did you start freelance writing literally when you were at college, and then it just sort of continued, with an interest in money?
Yeah, I think that's what really kicked it off. So I think it was growing up an interest in money and business. I wouldn't even put banking and finance into there because like as a kid, you don't really know, like a young kid, you don't really know the intricacies of banking and like the banking system and how it works. So I guess just like business and money, like I always had like maybe an eye for like, hey, this is a good businessman for this reason. This is a good whatever for this reason. So I think that's what sparked it. I think blockchain and digital currency really falls into that fold. And then the first time I ever did an blog post about Bitcoin was in 2016. A friend of mine is a photographer, videographer, and he had a sort of shoot to do at a concert. So we went there, and then at the concert I met the editor-in-chief. It was in Philadelphia, where I live today. I met the editor-in-chief of, it was a culture blog at the time. It's no longer online, but it was called Oogie Woogie. And, we were talking. Yeah. We were talking. We talked all sorts of stuff. I'm like, oh, man, I really enjoy writing. I was telling him about that. And I was just like, if you guys ever needed a contributor, like I would love to contribute in any way that I possibly can. And then he's just like, yeah, we are open to that. Like, just pitch me some ideas, and we'll see what works. We'll see what we can get up there. And the first thing I pitched was like an article about Bitcoin, but it was called "Whatever Happened to Bitcoin? Nothing Good." And the reason for that was, it's 2016. Nothing. I think there was like a lull in the price at the time, so it's not even like speculators were excited, and it was pretty much just being used on like darknet markets, and there was just bad news about it all the time. So the tone of the article was pretty much like that. It did cover some of like the market price action that happened in between, but the overall tone was just like, hey, like this thing has existed since 2010, 2009, and nothing good has really happened. Like and that was the first time I ever wrote an article about Bitcoin in 2016.
Oh, and what was your? Can you remember the gist of the article? How did you conclude with it? I mean, what was the content?
The content, for the most part, it covered the price action because it had done quite a bit up until there. But I think one of the main messages in there was just like it reflects in the title, like whatever happened to this, nothing good. Like, hey, this is being used to buy drugs on darknet marketplaces. And I think like that was like the crux of it, that like, hey, this thing exists. Sure, a little bit happens with the price, but like when we look at how it's being used in the world day to day, it's not something that I think people would feel like comfortable with or like, be like, wow, this is a great use.
And so just going back a bit again, what do you think was it about, money and finance that sparked your curiosity?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it's one of those things. Maybe it's like unexplainable. Maybe there's not words for it. But like, I feel like some things people may just have an attraction to, or something that's like, I don't know, a good fit for them. Maybe the words like fate or destiny or something. But I always had interest in maybe it stems from like being a kid and, it's your birthday and people are giving you $10 on your birthday. At the end, you have like this nice little stack of $10. And, I think maybe it comes from that. Maybe that's where it began. But just like continuing on that path where like I'm a person being a kid, I always like saving money, like my birthday money and stuff. And then maybe the older I got, you just start thinking in ways like, okay, birthday money's cool, but like, how are businesses making money? Like there's more to money than just saving money or whatever. Like there's businesses who are adding real value to the world. Sure, they're making money in the process, but like I feel like money's intertwined in a lot of business aspects like that. So maybe it started with me being this kid saving his birthday money. And then like, the older you get, the more evolved you get, the more you understand, the more you can read and learn. You just understand its broader applications. And I think that's probably how it came about.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite classes was, business studies. I love the concept of business because effectively in business, you're trying to improve people's lives, and you can tell how valuable your business is by how much you can charge for it. If you're doing a really good job, people are willing to pay more, and if it's pretty crap, then, it's not going to exist for very long because you won't have any money coming in because people won't spend it. So I think it's an indication of how much value you can contribute to society. But there was always this nagging, looking back on it now, for me, there was always this nagging kind of question that I never really asked myself, because I just kind of, I don't know, it was just, money was just there because we're never educated on it. Nobody asks where it comes from. Like, what is money? Do you think that maybe might have been a driver for you? Because obviously, like with you being a writer, that makes you one of the biggest busybodies on the planet.
So I think you bring up a good point where at one point you do ask yourself, like, what is money? And then, like, you learn the 3 characteristics of what something needs to be money. But I think the more you read, especially, like, you learn of things, I guess people call it like perfect money, or like the closest form to perfect money. So I think that research, that research route takes you into studies about gold. More modern, it takes you into studies about digital assets. So I do think that came into the play, but I'd say a lot of the research that one of the research topics I'm interested in now is more along the lines of that. What is money? Like, what is a more ideal system of money? So I don't think that was on my radar necessarily a couple years ago. Definitely, like, gold comes into the mix, especially in the BTC era where they're like, oh, it's digital gold. But I think now more than ever is a time when I have my attention to something like that and, like, interested in learning more and more about that.
Do you think it might have been in your subconscious? I mean, did you ever ask, like, obviously money that we use at the moment is paper. Did you ever think to yourself, like, where did this come from? Like, like, it's paper. It's got to come from somewhere, But as a kid, you don't ask about Father Christmas, and you don't ask about where money comes from. Your parents don't tell you.
You bring up a really interesting point there because, like, as a kid, you don't think about that. And I think the thing is, like, maybe if you're not even, like, keen on precious metal and digital currencies, I think you still don't think about that. Like, you have this idea, like, oh, coronavirus, the government's printing more money, this can't be good, inflation. But, like, I don't know if it has a negative, it has the potential to have a negative effect on the world and the economy. But, at the same time, like, I think a lot of people still don't question to this day, like, what would be a better form of this? Or maybe, like, how can I actually have a store of value and, like, really protect my wealth against something like this? So I think it's probably easy for us to talk about since, we're big on Bitcoin. We know about digital currency. I feel like that takes people down, like, this Austrian economics route where they learn, I guess, just a perspective, a view, a theory of economics that you don't really get at school if you did go an economics route, and you do question these things. But I think a lot of people are living in this world where it doesn't get called into question to them because they just haven't faced anything that makes them really question it. They know more money's being printed, but they can't. Maybe they feel like they can't do anything about that. Maybe they feel like there isn't anything to do about that, and they kind of just roll with the punches.
That's very true actually. And so for anybody listening, and also myself, can you just give us a brief background of what Austrian economics is?
Wow. So, I'm not sharp as I used to be on Austrian economics. A lot of people be like, "Oh, go read Rothbard."
Just a few sentences will be right. Just what is it in one sentence, or maybe two, in a tweet.
Go read Ludwig von Mises. But I think maybe at the crux of Austrian economics is like it really is this sort of free market economy where maybe it's not affected so much by the Keynesian economics where they call it like the invisible hand or whatever, where things kind of where there's a little bit of intervention to tweak things. I think it is more like a perfect economy where things work themselves out from the actions by the actors within the economy. That was always my sort of approach when learning about Austrian economics and like picking up those theories.
Right, got ya. And so where has your research on the creation of money sort of taken you now? And what's your take on how Craig went about creating Bitcoin?
Well, both those questions are really interesting. So I'll start with the first. When it comes to like where my research is about that now, I think I'm paying a lot of attention to like the precious metal market, gold in particular, because even though I think people are very underwhelmed by what gold has been doing in the market recently, and I think there are some global economic forces that can kind of play the role that they play to suppress the price of it. If you kind of look back, like what 1 ounce of gold bought you probably in like, I don't know, like let's say like 1905, just theoretically, hypothetically, it preserved its value in a way where, what 1 ounce of gold was getting you back then is probably extremely similar to what 1 ounce of gold is getting you today. When if you look at something like the dollar, what $1 was getting you in 1905 is not what $1 is getting you today. So I'm really diving into that right now, and so spending time on precious metals. Now, when it comes to, what was the second question about Craig?
What's your thoughts on how he went about creating Bitcoin?
So yeah, that's super interesting because, we just came off of the CoinGeek Zurich conference and I was able to, first, the presentations and the people in attendance were absolutely awesome. There's no place in the world like a CoinGeek conference where so many great minds come together and you're able to just learn, which leads to innovation and making progress in the world and on Bitcoin. No other place like that. So if anybody hasn't been or hasn't tuned in, I definitely recommend checking out the next one. It's in October. It's going to be in New York City. I believe it's in New York City. So just look out for that. So when it comes to Craig's creation of it, I think it's super interesting because it came at a time when I guess the world was undergoing a financial crisis. But it's one of those things that is closer to perfect or sound money when you look at it. And I've also been doing a lot of reading in this area recently too. And it's kind of just like, the way a blockchain network is set up differs drastically from the way the banking and finance system is set up. Where in banking and finance, like let's say there is a sort of bank run and that has this detrimental effect on the world economy, on the citizens, on the consumers. But, on a digital currency network, there can't really be this bank run that shuts everything down. Like in the traditional finance world, you see like banks getting bailed out when things really go south. Nobody's
depends
getting
if you're
bailed
invested in Safe Dollar. I was it say Safe Dollar, Safe Moon Dollar, whatever.
something weird like that. But nobody's getting bailed out on a blockchain digital currency network. So I think one of the more unique elements, especially how the world's kind of in like this economic turmoil that's kind of created by coronavirus, is that, let's say things were to go extremely south, all markets suffer. I think that's something that should be said. Like everybody's going to experience this downtick in their economy, but a digital currency network will persist into the future as long as two computers are online putting hash toward the network. And maybe a good example of this is Mt. Gox, if you look back, where things did go south, where they didn't have the money to cover creditors and the users of the platform. But the thing is, that was the Bitcoin exchange, but Bitcoin still exists today, and it exists in a better form than it does today. When if we look at something like traditional finance, Sure, a couple banks went out of business. There's no more Lehman Brothers. They messed up. But, can we really say that the traditional financial system is in a better place than it is today? I don't know if we can. And, they just kind of tweak things behind the scenes, what goes on under the hood. But it's not like the network or the system becomes more resilient. But on a blockchain and digital currency network, it becomes more resilient. And I think all that's to say, maybe just like to round that up, that like when it comes to like an economic system, that blockchain and digital currency networks create that better economic system, because the word's not foolproof, because people do mess up, and it's more on there's intermediaries on blockchain and digital currency networks. Like if you were using Mt. Gox, you were counting on them to have your money at the end of the day, and they didn't have it. But the thing is, it will still exist into the future. The network will be more resilient. Hopefully there's improvement to the network in a way where people are more cautious and aware to make sure another Mt. Gox situation doesn't happen. But in the traditional finance system, like it's more susceptible to things going south and there being no more resiliency improvement in the future than there was when things did go south.
So what in your opinion, what do you think is it that gives Bitcoin its value, its fundamental value?
So I mean, I think that's easy. We're talking BSV, and that's easy.
Go ahead.
There's businesses, people, developers that wake up every day, and they're interested in creating solutions that improve the world, that increase efficiency, that reduce inefficiencies in a lot of verticals and industries. Good examples of this are like Stefan Nelson and Torje Sunda over at Lendem, and what they're doing for the accounting industry. What Luke is doing at Tonic Pow, where I think what's really cool about those businesses is if you take them out of a blockchain digital currency setting, they're still good solutions. There's still, solutions that marketers are going to need. There's still solutions that the accounting industry needs. And, I think that adds a lot of value to the network. It's just, it's said often, but it's true. It's just real utility taking place. There's real commerce taking place, all in this effort to create solutions that will improve the world. And I feel like, the reason it's possible, or the reason that they're doing what they're doing, is because there's finally a system that can handle the transaction throughput, that's still on this public blockchain, which adds a level of transparency that you don't really get in anywhere else in the world, any other protocol, any other industry. So just all those elements coming together, and then when you have the businesses building on top of them, it has fundamental value. It's not this thing where people sit back and speculate. Like if somebody was really to pick apart what happens on chain, they could probably, do some sort of equation to be like, this is worth this. And it's not this thing where people are like, oh, well, we're hoping for this to come out on this chain, and we're hoping that the dentist will use DentaCoin. Like, that doesn't happen. It doesn't. We don't need to worry about that. We just don't need to worry about that when it comes to Bitcoin.
Yeah, actually, I think I might be able to teach you something here about Bitcoin. Do you want to learn something?
I love to learn. Let's go for it.
All right. So, let's do this. So I was asking questions there, just so I was curious as to how you would answer it. So check this out. Bitcoin has got 3 different types of value. It's got its fundamental value. It's got the fundamental value comes from its size and neutral growth of the network. Its technical value, which comes from the speed, cost, and scale of the network. And then its economic value, which comes from its utility and applications. And it's the fundamental value that absolutely fascinated me, I got into Bitcoin. And actually thinking about it, I've probably been dying to tell someone like you all about it, because you are a reporter. So you've got more of a reach than me. So have you ever given any thought or relevance or significance to when Craig released the white paper? Do you know when that was, Testia?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Was it October 2019? It was around the financial crisis.
Did you know the date?
I don't know the date off the top of my head, no.
Oh, mate,
I want to say the 23rd.
Mate, this is ace because what you've got to remember, right, and this is how I figured out, Craig is Asperger's, right? And so nothing is left to chance. He can't help himself. Everything has to be planned meticulously. So there is always a fundamental reason to absolutely everything that he does, right? So this is what gives Bitcoin its fundamental value over all other shitcoins. And it's to do with making Bitcoin a commodity. So a commodity is something that is common to everyone. So if something has a central point of authority, control, or influence, it's not a commodity because there's a central element in control of it. So, if something has a centralized starting point, it means that that same thing can be started by anyone else, anywhere, at any time, which implies an infinite supply and therefore a fundamental value of zero because, the supply is there. So this is how Craig got around this that no other network knows. So the Bitcoin network was started on the 3rd of January 2009. And in order to try and dilute that starting point as much as he could, he divided it into two separate entities. The white paper being one, which he released to the Western world, and then the author being the second part of that starting point, which was Japanese. So you've got the Western world and then the Eastern world at different sides of the planet trying to distance themselves as far apart as possible. And the reason he chose a Japanese name is because Japan is highly developed, technologically advanced, and politically neutral. So it gave him, the author, credibility. So people didn't say, well, how did you get this education? They weren't questioning his political motives. They were just like, oh, okay, well, this guy is obviously intelligent. He's created this technology. Let's just sort of give it a go. But also the reason he chose a Japanese name is because Japan, one being on the other side of the world, it's harder to get to. The population means that he would be hard to find. Plus, there's also a language barrier, which would enable the network to grow for a period of 10 years without that central point of authority, control, or influence. So that's what all these other networks would have to compete with if they wanted to compete with the fundamental value of Bitcoin. It's that neutral growth without having that leader, yeah? But the issue still comes down to it had a starting point. So how do you dilute that starting point? Well, it's a bit like having gold in the ground waiting to be found. So all the information that anyone needed to start the network themselves was in the white paper. So he released the white paper before starting the network. And when he released it, he knew that he had to provide a reasonable amount of time for anyone to start the network themselves, which is why he gave it credibility by posting it to a cryptographic mailing list. He didn't post it to his local supermarket and say, oh, here's a Bitcoin white paper. He posted it to a group of people that would have had a fundamental understanding of what was actually in the white paper and how to start it. Now in the UK, a reasonable amount of time, let's say if a tenant wants to give their landlord notice, 2 months is considered in law a reasonable amount of time. So because he wrote the white paper and created it, it was his responsibility to provide that reasonable amount of time, but it was also really important that he start the network under a pseudonym. So basically what he had to do was release the white paper, but give himself the best chance of being able to start the network before someone else. So if you think about it, what are the two busiest months of the year where people are preoccupied?
I guess it's like the holiday there, and I don't even know what the second one would be.
The festive period, so November and December. They're the busiest months of the year, right? And the white paper was released on October the 31st. So what's October 31st?
It's Halloween.
Yeah, and Halloween is what? For him, in the terms of wanting to start the network himself, it's an added distraction. So he released it on October the 31st.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so he released it on October the 31st to try and neutralize the starting point, to give it to sort of reduce its significance. So people are preoccupied with Halloween and all that. And then, so he released it on Halloween for that reason. And then as the clock started ticking down, not only did he make sure that he gave it 2 months, it was 2 months and 4 days. So it's definitely a reasonable amount of time. 2 months plus that 4 days before starting the network.
So let's rewind it a little bit, because the economics of the system are bulletproof, and we're talking about the different types of value that Bitcoin has within it. And I think this is where it gets interesting, and maybe to the rest of the world, it gets a little confusing and unclear. Because, let's talk about narratives for a second. Where BTC, they call themselves digital gold. And even though it might be complete crap, not true, and this speculative thing, we could sit down, look at how much gold, how much money is locked up in gold in the world, do our calculation with the Bitcoin network and be like, okay, if this thing is actually digital gold, it's worth this much. Now, a lot of people call BSV the internet of value. What is the internet of value worth? How do we come up with that calculation?
Oh, yeah, I can work it. I can tell you everything, mate, if you want to know.
Well, I'm interested to hear what you're saying because, I think that's an obstacle that a lot of people run into. I think if there was a clear, concise answer for that, it could help a lot of people. And I do feel for people when they say that because, it's easy to take the market cap of gold, divide whatever with BTC, even though it's not true. It's something that people can understand. It's something that people can consume, and it's palatable for people. And I think if there was a way to show the world and audiences that this is what the internet of value is worth, this is what the backbone, this is what plumbing is worth, I think that could do a lot of justice when it just comes to, because a lot of education needs to happen. There's over 1,000 digital currencies that exist. You're going to come across Denta coins. You're going to come across pickle finances, and it's really tough because it's just like there's so many, especially with younger generations, that I don't even think they start at Bitcoin anymore. I don't think they start with BSV. I don't think they start with BCH. I don't think they start with BTC. I think they're on things like TikTok looking at like Shiba Inu coin because that's just how information is given to them. So, there's kind of an education step that needs to be taken that hasn't been fulfilled all the way. And I think a good starting point, or one of the points, elements, factors that needs to be covered is what is the internet of value worth. So I'm interested in hearing what you have to say in that regard.
Well, yeah. So in order to first of all understand what the internet of value is worth, you have to understand that the value in a medium of exchange comes from its neutrality. In that, if someone controls it, it's fundamentally worthless. So the issue is, how can the creator of a digital commodity not have fundamental control over it? Well, this is why Craig designed proof of work, because proof of work dilutes that central point of authority, control, and influence over time, which is why he had to leave it 10 years before he could come out and say, yes, I created this, because then you've got that neutral growth that no other network can compete with. So if let's say if China say, oh, we're going to start our network, well, America's never going to use it due to political policy. And if America said, oh, we're going to start a network, China will say, well, we're never going to use it due to political policy. So how can you get two superpowers to agree to use a commodity as a medium of exchange? Well, it has to be completely neutral. So this is what Craig did. So he released the white paper, giving the starting point credibility. So anybody could have started it. In that 2-month period, he's given it a reasonable amount of time. It's effectively like gold already being in the ground, but he was the first one to discover it. So he released the white paper, 2 months later started the network, and then basically had to step back and hide himself. But this is the clever part. So in order to prevent somebody having control of the network, the way you do that is through accountability. So everybody on the network has to be accountable, which is why he designed Bitcoin as a chain of signatures. But with Bitcoin not being centrally controlled, it effectively means that it can be centrally controlled. Because if it was controlled, you wouldn't allow anybody else to get control of it. So with Bitcoin being neutral, it has the ability to be controlled, but the flip side of that is that if you control it, you centralize it and you crash its fundamental value to zero when you turn it from a commodity into a security. So Craig knew that during that 10-year period where he couldn't come out and say, look, I created this thing, he knew that somebody would find a way to centralize the network and bring it under their control. The chances of that were absolutely massive. So this is why he started the Tulip Trust. So he set the Tulip Trust up on the on the 9th of June 2011, and he basically put 17% of the circulating supply at the time in this tulip trust, and the keys were to be returned to him on the 1st of January 2020. And what he was going to do is he was going to use that to wipe all these shitcoins off the face of the planet. That's what he was going to do with it, which just amazes me. So that's the first thing. It's the neutrality of the network. So you control it, you crash its fundamental value to zero. And the 5 pillars of decentralization are: 1, the chain of signatures. That's why it's so important. A fixed supply, so that no one can control it. A locked protocol, so that no one can control it. So they're almost very similar in reasoning and rationale. And then you have to have infinite scale, so that there is always new market to compete for. And then you have to have competition, which is in the form of proof of work, which dilutes that central point of authority over time. So that's its fundamental value. So you're now talking about its economic value. Well, have a listen to this. Are you ready? Let me know if you can hear this. Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm just going to play.
If you're playing something, I can't hear it.
It'll be on in a minute. In a second, 2 seconds.
We've tested up to 380 gigabyte blocks. We've tested 1 million transactions a second and transaction sizes up to 20 megabytes.
But just in the meantime, I guess while that's coming up,
operating systems.
What you're saying is 100% spot on. But I think maybe what I'm talking about is more about adoption. And that's why I like companies like Abenda and Tonic Pal so much. The guys at BitPing are doing great things, because these are solutions that exist outside of Bitcoin that get people to pick it up. So maybe I think I might be talking about adoption more than I'm talking about value or fundamentals, because the fundamentals are there. That's undeniable. And, on BTC, the funny thing is the fundamentals aren't there, but the adoption is there. And when I look at why the adoption is there, it's because your neighbor, your mother, your father, your grandmother, they can understand, oh, digital gold, I know what gold is. The market cap of gold is this. You look at the BTC supply, you put that market cap into the supply, you do your little division equation, and you know what it's worth. But I think a lot of people struggle, and I think this is important from maybe a banking finance business perspective as well. As how do you place the value on BSV? A lot of the time people say that in BSV price is kind of taboo, but I like the price. Price is important. As much as people want to ignore the price, price is so necessary. So I'm just trying to think of how could it be more understandable to individuals who aren't deeply immersed in blockchain and digital currency that the internet of value has this value attached to it. People have these false ideas about all sorts of digital currencies and what they're worth. Some of them are blatant pump and dumps. Some of them have maybe things going for them that may or may not turn out. But I think when it comes to adoption, people have some trouble wrapping their head around that aspect of Bitcoin, unless they are maybe on a consumer level. You're using something like Twetch, maybe you're using something like Streamanity. I love what the guys at Haste did. Their games are really fun to play, and you don't even know you're using BSV beyond the fact that you have, you need a hand cash wallet to get started. But when it comes to adoption, I think that's an area that my brain is always trying to wrap itself around. It's just what can be done to educate others and help more people understand and adopt Bitcoin.
Yeah. So were you not able to hear that video that I was playing then? Did you not hear anything?
I didn't hear it at all. Sorry.
That's a shame. Well,
I couldn't hear.
Okay. Well, basically, I've done all this research for you. Okay. So I've literally gone through, all the videos that Craig has said back in the day. So I can tell you that when this was back when Bitcoin was BCH. Craig was interviewed, and he was telling people about what Bitcoin is capable of, and he said so Bitcoin can do 1 million transactions a second. All those transactions can be scaled 1,000 times with payment channels, which effectively means about 1 billion transactions per second, which is all of global commerce times about 50. I'm quoting him here. And he also said, and this is one of the questions I posed to him myself, because I had this, I was like you, I wanted to know the answers. So when I interviewed him once, I said, is the market that effectively, BSV is going for, is that global e-commerce, which is currently valued at $29 trillion? And his answer to me was, no, that's too small. And I was just like, boom, right, I've got it. So now you just simply look at all the financial markets in the world. And Craig has said this. So with Bitcoin at scale, he said we can have all derivatives. Now, the derivatives market is between 800 trillion and $1 quadrillion. And that is just the derivatives market. Now, the derivatives market is by far the largest, but that is just the derivatives market. And his answer was, we can have all derivatives. We can have complex trades. We can have high frequency trading. It effectively means everything that happens globally. So you can put Bitcoin's market cap or its fundamental value at a minimum of $1 quadrillion as a market cap. So it's basically the derivatives market and some, and all the other markets thrown in, because Bitcoin it's a commercial internet. So the internet that we use at the moment, like the World Wide Web, it's basically a load of corporate servers linked up together. But there is no competition between those who host those servers, no proof of work, as it were. So all the system is linked together, and it comes together, and it's basically the entire system hinges on one single private key, which is in the hands of an organization called ICANN, ICANN, which is the Internet Company for Assigned Names and Numbers. And they do a key ceremony, like 4 times a year, where you've got 7 sort of like public key holders that all come together, 4 times a year to do this key ceremony, and just basically sort of like make sure that the private key is still working, all this kind of stuff. So the internet that we use at the moment is centralized, whereas now Bitcoin is effectively a commercial internet, because the blockchain is just simply the process that the data goes through in order to be uploaded. That is literally it. So when you use Bitcoin to upload your data, it's uploaded to this network through a network of distributed, decentralized, competing mining operations, which means you just simply have sovereignty over that data. And the way you have sovereignty over that data is by using Bitcoin. So Bitcoin gets its value from how much you desire to have sovereignty over your data. And when you talk about microtransactions, every email that you send, you're putting energy into. So whether it's a joke, whether it's sending a picture, when you have micropayments, those little bits of energy that you're using can now have a value. You can assign a value to. Oh, that's worth 1,000ths of a cent, or whatever. It's nothing, but that 1,000ths of a cent, which isn't going to have any effect on your life whatsoever, allows you sovereignty over it for the first time. You're not giving it up and handing it over to a corporate server who are then using that as a data point on you to sell to advertisers and invade your privacy.
So you make two really good points right there. Like you said, the value is the value that maybe having sovereignty over your own data has to you. Now, I know this probably makes a lot of sense to me. This probably makes a lot of sense to you. This probably makes a lot of sense to everybody listening. But how badly do my neighbors want sovereignty over their data? Now, I think there's more. I think there's more to it, and I think there's more reasons that it's valuable. And I think microtransactions and nano payments are invaluable. And I think that opens up so many opportunities in the world and business models that just weren't possible before. But maybe I think I say all this to say that my job as a reporter, a writer, an educator is to do the best that I can to help educate others and make them understand. And I think part of that is making it really palatable and consumable. And even though everything you said is spot on, 100% correct, a point that I've noticed over time is it's still difficult to tell people, hey man, don't use Facebook. That's still an obstacle.
Well, this is. I mean, obviously, I use the word sovereignty. That's like quite broad, but really, it's privacy. Because if you are writing an email or anything like that, or uploading your precious photos or wedding, family videos, whatever, if an organization like Facebook, for example, doesn't like your political views, they can just simply wipe the data off the servers. They own that data. So not only do they own it and they can delete it, they also use that to get a data point of you. So they're like, this is Mr. Smith. He's married to Jane Smith. They've got 2.4 children. They've got a dog called Wesley. They live here. He likes running and all this kind of stuff. Do you really want a huge corporation to know all this stuff about you? And also the fact that they're profiting from this. They're profiting from the information that you're giving them. Do you really want that, or do you want to profit yourself?
See, that's the thing. It becomes another one of those things like, I understand why I don't want that. I'm sure you understand why we don't want that. I'm sure the audience understands why they don't want that. But there's so many people using Facebook who don't care about that.
Yeah, but they will and it's your job to convince them.
Well, I'm not here to sway anybody. I want everybody to have their own opinions, but it is one of my jobs to educate them, to just say like, there's value in this. Like there's an alternative. There's another route you can go. You don't have to do this. But I think we also should look at the situation in a way where a lot of people don't have a problem with Facebook. A lot of people don't have a problem with Twitter. It's going to get a lot of people. It's going to, those folks see the value in something like a blockchain-based network first, but a lot of people never run into the obstacle that will make them see the value in a blockchain-based social media network. Now, I think one of the great things is there's so much value beyond the social media use case. But, when I do approach some of these problems, I do like to think like, okay, it's easy for blockchain and digital currency enthusiasts to pick up these new technologies, but I think there's still a little bit of a push that needs to happen in some areas for, I don't want to call them normal people because, we're normal people, but I think there's still a bit of a push that needs to take place to make those who don't have their eye on it aware and keen of the benefits it could introduce in their lives and the efficiencies it could introduce into their lives. So it's tough, there's the balance of that. I always try to think of like, okay, I'm a guy who loves blockchain, digital currency. I get it. But like the guy who's still on Facebook, the guy who's just like, I don't need this. Like, what makes them need it,
Oh, well, I'll tell you that as well. I mean, this is great. I mean, hopefully you'll, if I can sort of unlock the secrets of Bitcoin for you, you can write about it and tell everybody. This would be great. So I'll give you 2 case studies here. The first one was I think it was Channel 7 News in Australia. There was recently a 60 Minutes program on how their entire channel got hacked. And for the first time in like 190 years, they thought they might not be able to put out a newspaper or a broadcast. And it was basically because their servers got hacked. And they were speaking to the technical director of Channel 7 News, and he said, yeah, this is a real blow for me because you just don't know how this virus got in here. Anybody could have had access to these servers, and when you look at the size of them, we've literally got to break everything down, almost like, electronic items on a ring main, and literally go through each one and try and isolate, where this hacker's got in. Whereas now, you don't need your own servers. Literally, News 7 could build their platform on the Bitcoin network that cannot be cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted. So they would build their business on using the Bitcoin network, on the servers. And the other one was a high-frequency trading company called Knight, who basically went bust in a half an hour when a technician was uploading a new data program to their servers, and they were using 8 servers. He updated 7 and then forgot to update the last one, and so their high frequency trading platform was putting out just odd trading signals, and the rest of the market saw what was going on, and within half an hour they'd lost $500 million and they went bankrupt. So you can now have high frequency trading on the Bitcoin network, because it's a small world mandala network, which effectively means that as it increases in size, the density of the links reduces even further, making it even more efficient the further it grows. So you can actually have high frequency trading platforms built on the Bitcoin network, doing literally like tradings, billions of transactions, in a nanosecond. So yeah, that's what I would say. It's literally a platform to build your business on. You don't need your servers anymore.
I totally agree, and I feel like it's important to say, like, I'm not a skeptic or anything, but I just try to enter this very balanced thinking of, I try to put myself in the shoes of like somebody who's has no awareness of blockchain and digital currency and believes that the services that they use, maybe like a Facebook, don't have any problems. But the thing is that when people do look for better solutions and they are trying to build these bulletproof things where they won't run into, the server problem you just described, or the problem that the high frequency trader had that you just described, is that inevitably, if they're serious about building these things, they end up on the Bitcoin BSV blockchain, because, there's almost no other place where they can build these solutions and have them, work at the scale that they need them to work at. So I've had a lot of conversations with people who were interested in all sorts of different models or maybe digital currency networks, but when they try to build, they end up on BSV because there's no other place that they can get it to work. So I think that's an important detail, and I think the adoption or the picking up of traction has started in that regard. So it works. That's the thing. It works. Eventually, people find their way to BSV. More and more people are doing it, and the ecosystem is indefinitely, it's growing. There's growth. There's new people coming in who are either brand new to blockchain. Maybe they came from another blockchain. Maybe they knew nothing about blockchain before. So that's a really positive thing, that people who are interested in building these innovative solutions for industries or even for consumers, eventually they end up on BSV. It's the only place that a lot of them can get their solution to work.
Actually, yeah, you've just sparked one of my synapses there. That's a really good point you make. I've just actually thought of maybe a way of describing it. So if you build your business on BSV, which is the original Bitcoin protocol, you own that business, because there is no central point of authority control on the BSV network. Whereas if you build your platform on Ethereum, which is going to proof of stake, or Cardano, which is like centralized mining by IOHK, or any other platform, you're effectively leasing your platform because there is a central controller of that network. So it's a bit like having a park home, or leasehold property. You can own the lease, but the fact is there is a leaseholder that when that lease comes to an end can take it away. Whereas when you build it on the Bitcoin network, because the chain of signatures is still intact and the protocol is locked, no one has control over it. So therefore you can build your business knowing that you own that business. And that's only possible on the original protocol that Craig designed.
Right. Many people have run into that obstacle in other areas before, where since, there's new Ethereum improvement proposals, EIPs, whatever they're called, they come up all the time. And it's something that I think is said often, but maybe the work that you did at one point in time becomes invalid at a point in the future because they're making these changes. So I think it's just another thing that comes back to like a serious business building a serious solution. If you are in that bucket, serious business, serious solution, you need something that's unchanging. You need the foundation that can handle the solution that you're building, in terms of how many customers you're servicing, in terms of, if it needs to be transparent so all parties can look at it and sign off on it. Just all the everything in regard to the technical side of things, you just need it to be unchanging so that it persists into the future. And I do think BSV is the only chain where that's taken place, where that has happened. Like, you could build today with confidence knowing that whatever you built is still going to be around in 20 years. So it's another reason that, businesses are building on BSV, one of the many.
Yeah, well, actually, this is kind of interesting. I can solve that problem for you initially about, the issue with Ethereum. Who was it that created Ethereum?
It's honestly a bunch of guys, but I'm sorry, but Vitalik, he gets all the coverage for it.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's the problem with Ethereum. Ethereum has a centralized starting point. Craig has solved this issue of a centralized starting point by releasing the white paper 2 months before starting the network, and then stepping back and letting proof of work dilute that central point of authority over time as the network grew. So that central point of authority became less and less, until now it's just like, right, well, we've got a completely neutral network, that's grown organically, that no other network can compete with all these miners on it using proof of work that are completely independent from each other. Whereas if Ethereum moves to proof of stake, there's no competition between the stakeholders. So effectively, it's like a multinational company. It's distributed, but it's not decentralized. And that's the same problem with every other shitcoin. Delegated proof of stake, pre-mined is even worse. I mean, that is an absolute joke shop. That is. Crikey, what IOTA's Tangle, Hydra Hashgraph. There's no competition in any of those systems, which means they're all centralized. And if they're centralized, it means the token on them has no fundamental value as money because it's centrally controlled.
It's true, and I think the reason that I'll say it's worked to date for those other chains is that, a majority of the players in the space, I still think they are speculators, and they're more interested in the speculation that can take place on those chains rather than the real business that could be built on those chains. It'll be interesting to see how things play out over, just like a long enough time horizon, where, I think retail investors, it's cyclical. They come in, they get burned, they leave. The ICO got rebranded as DeFi. They came back, they made their money, they got burned, they leave. So it'll be interesting to see, how much longer can that really go on. And I also think it's important to say is that, there's a global sort of regulatory crackdown on some of these really questionable actors in the space. Binance was recently told in 3 different countries that they're not legally allowed to operate there, and that they need to terminate their service by a certain point in time. We also see the ban taking place in China, where they want all the digital currency miners out. They want banks to stop servicing those accounts that deal in cryptocurrency. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the time horizon. I mean, people have talked about this for quite a while, we need to get the bad actors out. We need to flush the bad actors out. But it seems like this is one of those points in time where the bad actors are actually getting flushed out. And it's not so much like the hollow threats, China bans Bitcoin every 2 years, but this time seems a little different.
Yeah, that's true, actually. So where do you think, I see, like I said, I really find your articles quite entertaining. Do you often find, is there a specific topic within the space that fascinates you? Are you educating people? Are you warning people? Are you sort of trying to describe concepts to them? I mean, what sort of floats your boat?
So right now, I really have an interest in all the mining ban stuff that's going on in China. I find that really interesting, and it's a current event. So there's always new information coming out there. But something I also really like to cover is some of the new and existing companies that pop up and the solutions that they're building and what they're working towards. I think I find that really exciting because, their solutions are actually being adopted. There's governments interested in using the BSV blockchain. There's industries where these solutions are a really good fit for. So I really like to stay up to speed with what they're doing or the solution they provided or the solution that they're creating. That's another area that I like to write about, and I'm just trying to think. There's a ton of different things that get covered. I do like covering just broader events that happen in the digital currency space as well. Maybe if a big bank gets the green light to start dealing in cryptocurrencies or something, or opens a trading desk for something in that regard. But those are some of the maybe the top 3 that I find myself keeping an eye out for, looking to cover.
And do you, is your reporting sort of relatively neutral? And do you generally get your information from other articles that you've read, or have you got a network of spies that kind of give you a little bit of insider information?
Wow! Now that you say that, I'm about to recruit a network of spies.
All
but
right, nice.
the way I do things and research at the moment, first I try to read as many articles as I can. And, within those articles, eventually you usually find yourself back at the source, which may be the first reporter to cover it, which may be like an individual who's familiar with the situation. From there, it's sometimes easy, it's sometimes hard to reach out to the source, talk with them to learn more. But yeah, I mean, like it's just kind of like almost a long research chain, unless if you're covering a company, where you kind of just get on the phone with whoever's at the company to learn your information. But outside of that, it's looking for that original source, getting as much good information as you can from them, and then also just including the bits of knowledge that you pick up along the way, maybe some knowledge that you learned in the past and how it applies to it. Long research chain, and if possible, talking to the source. Like, that's how it gets done.
Right. And did you use your contacts within the space to end up getting this job with CoinGeek? How did that come about? Who was your first point of contact, and how was your pitch?
Wow. So there's the current editor-in-chief. The way I got in contact with CoinGeek was I was put on to BSV after I posted on Twitter about BTC that one time. I think part of, the research rabbit hole that you go down when you are researching BSV, you end up on CoinGeek. And then I thought, like, hey, like, if this is actually the way, like, this is something I want to learn more about and educate others about. And then, I think from writing experience in the past that I knew that, like, hey, if you're interested in contributing, if you're interested in becoming part of the team, you reach out to the editor-in-chief, you have a conversation with them. It's either a good fit or it's not a good fit. There was a former editor-in-chief who's no longer at CoinGeek, but, I sent an email to him. I think at the time CoinGeek actually wasn't hiring, but, I always kept my eye on what was going on there. I contributed freelance articles when I could, but then eventually got to the point where they were looking for someone to contribute in a bigger way. And, I was eager, I was ready, I was excited to take that on, and that's how I became very involved with CoinGeek.
And was there a particular topic that you remember reporting on that really, really kind of like that you will always remember as kind of like a concept or a particular situation where you were just like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is a gem. What was your sort of like, what was your favorite article? What was the topic on it? What was it about?
I mean, I like to think that, my favorite article hasn't been written yet, or, when I'm writing, I guess my last article is my favorite article. Like, each time I should be improving, each time it should be better. I can tell you right now that my favorite article that I've written is one of my last articles. It's about the mining ban in China, the energy efficiency of all versions of Bitcoin, and I had a really good conversation with the COO over at Tal. His name is Lars Jorgensen. Lars, if I pronounced your last name wrong, I'm sorry, man. But, we had a really good conversation about just the whole mining ban that's happening in China, where miners are looking to relocate and where they're actually relocating, why BSV is the greener alternative when it comes to the other digital currencies that are around. And there's just so much good information, so much good conversation that we had there that was able to be turned into this really informative article that if you haven't read it yet, I say everybody go check it out. But that's my favorite article to date.
Brilliant. And do you ever get the opportunity to have a bit of a chat with the other writers just to make sure you're not writing on the same topic? Like, do you all sort of let you know?
Oh, for sure. I mean, No. We all talk on a weekly basis. So, like, we all have an awareness of what, everybody's working on. We do have, like, weekly chats to talk about maybe what we're seeing as developing events and current events in the space, things that we should keep our eye on, maybe events that are coming up that we should tune into. So yeah, I mean, like, all the writers are in contact. We have a general awareness of what the other person's working on. So yeah, I mean, the whole team is great. All the writers are magnificent. So we do have an awareness of what everybody's up to.
Yeah, and had you ever heard of John Southurst before you got involved? I didn't realise that it was John Southurst that interviewed that guy, Colin Burgess, I think his name was, who was the Scottish guy that flew all the way over to Japan to protest outside Mount Gox when Mark Capellas walked in there. Did you know that was him?
So I wasn't aware of that at the time, but I will say, John is great, and he's been around for a long time. I don't know if people have that awareness where, he was doing work, I believe, for CoinDesk in the past. And, so he has this very bird's eye view on everything that's happened. And he's been through a lot of different stages and cycles of what goes on in blockchain digital currency. So, but no, I didn't know the story about the guy who went to protest outside of Mount Gox. That's super interesting. I'm going to have to go back and look at that.
Yeah, it was kind of, obviously, I've been on John's show before. I've interviewed him, he's interviewed me. And sort of like, obviously the Bitcoin story just fascinates me. There's so many twists and turns in it. And then you go back and you're just like, hold on a minute, I recognize that voice. And I said, oh, that's John. I don't believe it. He's the guy that interviewed this other chap. This is awesome. I absolutely love it. I mean, do you remember anything about the Mt. Gox hack? Can you remember when that was? I mean, did you write about that at the time?
So I think, when it comes to the Mt. Gox hack, I don't think I was involved in a big way while it was going on, but I think I became, I guess, keen to it or turned my attention to it when the fallout of the situation began taking place. Because when was Mt. Gox hacked? Was that 2014?
I can't. I honestly, I can't remember. I'll have to. Actually, I've got my phone here. Let me just do some Wikipedia searching.
Yeah, sure. I want to say it was like maybe late 2014, maybe early 2015, and like my first article about blockchain digital currency wasn't until 2016. Yeah, so like my first article about Bitcoin related stuff wasn't until 2016. So like, while it was happening, I probably saw a headline, but like I wasn't super up to date on it. But I think at the point when I did start writing, that the fallout was taking place, where it's just like, there's a court date happening here. Hey, the creditors are looking for their money. So, that was more of my awareness, and then going back to read on the situation. But like while it was happening, I did not have my attention turned to it.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. Actually, the first time I ever heard of Bitcoin was when my mother was trying to engage me in conversation. And she said, oh, there's this thing in the newspaper and everyone's getting really excited about it. This thing called Bitcoin, it's almost hit $1. And I was just like, yeah, so? And I was just like, oh, looking back on it, I'm just like, one of those moments that, that I missed. And she knew about it. Boy, I mean, she didn't know about it like I know about it now, but obviously she was reading about it. And I just kind of like passed it off. And it's just one of these things where I wonder if that moment maybe planted the seed, because when I first looked at Bitcoin, I think the first time I remember looking at the price was 2016. It was around sort of like $400, sort of roughly around that. And I'd completely forgotten that my mother had actually asked me, told me about this, until I sort of just had a sort of moment of clarity, and I was just like, oh my god, this is what she was talking about. All those years ago, and now it's like 500 quid. And then I remember looking back, because I thought it had been around for like ever, for some reason. And then when I looked back at the history, and I was just like, hold on a minute, this is the greatest investment in history. How on earth has it done this? And that's what really got my attention. It wasn't a case of, how much money have I missed out on? How much money can I make? It was a case of, how has it done this? Because if it was a Ponzi scheme, it would have collapsed. Chances are it would have collapsed, in that 10-year period at some point, especially with all the financial turmoil that had been going on in the world. Ponzi schemes generally don't last, because they always need a new round of investors coming in. So I was just like, how on earth has it done that? And yeah, that was that was basically what triggered my journey down the rabbit hole, as they say. Was there a particular moment like that where you were just like, I need to get to grips with this, and then like you just, it's like you're digging forever, Was there a moment that sort of inspired you?
I mean, I don't think I did like the nosedive down the rabbit hole. I think it was that Facebook post in 2013 that turned me onto it. I think I was always doing like research at a steady pace. There was probably time because I was a student at that point in time when like maybe I probably didn't look at it for maybe like a month or two, but then I think it always did come back in my head like, oh, that's right, that Bitcoin thing, what's it doing? And then, go online, there's more information about it. So, I don't think there was ever just like a day where I spent my 24 hours just like, oh, what's going on here. But I think it was always like a slow and steady awareness of like, this is what's going on in the space.
Right, awesome, man. Do you get paid in Bitcoin working for CoinGeek?
I have the option to, but
Really?
my rent is paid in US dollars, so it makes it a tough one. But yeah, I have the option to. I have in the past for sure. Rent needs to be paid, groceries need to be bought. My grocer does not accept BSV yet, so it's US dollar at the moment. But I'm open, and of course, if my friends owe me or something, if I pay for a dinner, you could pay me in BSV. But at the moment, for some of the bigger payments, it's US dollar.
Great. And what is it that you're sort of like looking forward to most at the moment? Is it the Copa lawsuit? Is it to see what happens with the mining? What is it that's kind of like really gripping your attention at the moment?
So the lawsuits, they're cool, but they're boring, man. But I don't think anybody's ever come out of court like that was fun. So it's fun. So to me, I love to read up on the aftermath and the summaries of what happens in the court. I'm not typically a person who sits through the court hearings. That could change in the future, but court's boring. It's not a sexy topic. So I think what has my attention most at the moment is I'm interested in some of the protocol stuff that's going on. There's supposed to be some exciting new things we see come out of that area soon. So that's one I have my attention to. I do have an awareness and keep an eye on the stuff that's happening in court because, I don't think the word is set a precedent, so I don't want to get that wrong, but it's just such a big case that will have a ripple effect throughout the world. So even though I'm not like, I'm not reading through these 80-page court documents, I do like to stay up to speed with what happens there. And I'm also just very interested in the companies whose solutions I think, or I'm really interested to learn more, and it makes me happy to see the companies who their solutions have been adopted outside of the blockchain and digital currency industry. I always think that's super cool. There's a lot of really good examples of that. Like the VX Pass guys, they're on a roll. Like the coronavirus, like it couldn't have been more perfect timing. Where now governments are adopting their solution when it comes to the verification for a coronavirus vaccine. So those are things that have my attention. Like on a broader scale outside of Bitcoin in general, the China mining stuff that's going on, that's something that I love to learn more about. That's a crucial one. And outside of that, it's like the stuff that kind of goes on with Tether and even USDC is coming into the mix. Because if those two kind of first, the court said Tether was safe, but now like the case has kind of been reopened and people are looking at it again like, hey, what's really going on here? And it kind of seems like the USDC, the stable coin created by Coinbase in combination with like the company called like Centra, it seems like they may be in a bit of hot water too. So that really has my interest at the moment in terms of like broader events outside of just Bitcoin in general.
Well, did you know this? Tether printed no Tether last month. Zero. Absolutely none.
Because they have to create quarterly reports or something now. Like they can't just keep making things up. Like they need to back it. So that's with Tether. But what has me concerned about USDC is they usually put out a monthly attestation by it's not exactly an auditor, but it's like a branch of a reputable auditing company. I think they're like the one of the top 7 accounting firms in the world. They usually put out their report on a monthly basis, but like it's July 1st and the May report hasn't come out yet. Oof. So I'm thinking that like maybe they don't have the money that they're supposed to have. That since this auditor has a good reputation, they can't just fudge it. But it seems like something's boiling there, and that's something I'm taking a deeper dive into at the moment.
Did you know, I think Tether, I'm just trying to find the image here. Sorry, not Tether. USDC. I think USDC printed $2.4 billion last month. I think. Let me see if I can find it.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how they think that they're gonna get away with it. And also, I mean, have you seen BNB Binance Coin? And that started rocketing up in price when Binance created their Binance USD. Oh, here we go. I've got the figures here. So yeah, US dollar Circle coin, $2.4 billion last month. Binance USD, $1.1 billion. And True USD, 337 million in a month.
So I think it gets dicey and slippery. And I mean, because the thing is, this happens in traditional finance. You're allowed to use leverage. But I think what probably goes on is some sort of leverage game where maybe what they have on, or the deposits that they take in, they're probably allowed to lend out a certain amount or whatever. But I think they're running into trouble there. And that it seems like it might come crumbling down soon. But I don't know, the way they were printing, it's just unsustainable. And that's why maybe Tether has stopped. Maybe we're going to see USDC stop soon. I know Binance USD is the third biggest stable coin or something. I think that's weird, whatever. Binance is shady, but that's another area to look into. So right now, I do have a big interest in what's happening with those stable coins.
Oh, excellent.
That may not be stable.
Great, yeah. I've just seen the time. We've been going for actually 1 hour 25 minutes. This has been great. So, can I kind of wrap this up by asking you, with all the knowledge that you have of being a journalist and all the information that you've picked up, how do you see this playing out? What's going to happen?
Sure. So, I mean, there's I'll cover all areas. No particular order of importance here. So, a lot of people in the digital currency ecosystems right now, I think they buy whatever coin they buy as to make a trade or to speculate it on. And I will say this, BSV Bitcoin it's a trade. BSV Bitcoin is an investment. It's not a trade. Maybe you could put a little bit of money in Dogecoin. Maybe tomorrow you make 10% on your money. BSV is it's more like putting your. This is an investment advice, but it's more like these businesses wake up every day to create solutions to improve the world. It's something that plays out over time. It's not something that plays out overnight. So that's something that I've picked up along the way. Something else that I've picked up along the way is that at the end of the day, a lot of these developers interested in creating solutions, they end up on BSV. Doesn't matter if they like BSV or not. There's just no other place where they can get the technical side of things that they need to click to create their solution. There's no other place they can get that on not another digital currency network, maybe not another piece of software, but BSV is where they come to make that happen. So I guess maybe a sort of a general statement is that we're at a point in time in BSV where a lot of companies are launching things, and we also have to keep in mind that BSV isn't very old, right? It's only a couple years old compared to some of these chains. So maybe keep in mind if you're, having a tough time thinking about it in comparison to other blockchains, is that, hey, it took BTC 10 years to get where it is. It took Ethereum less than that because BTC already existed. BSV is well on its way and is doing better work than both those chains. But keep in mind that it's relatively new. When it came out, a lot of people, they first had their ideas. They first began building their businesses. But it takes a while to build a business. But now we're seeing that come to fruition. We're seeing the solutions out in the open. We're seeing the solutions get adopted and pick up traction. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. And something I also really like about BSV is even if there was a sort of downtrend in the market, even if there was another crypto winter bear market, whatever people want to call it, is that BSV performs well and really good in those times because it does have this fundamental value where real transactions by real companies are being put on chain and real commerce and real utility takes place. So, I think there's a lot to look forward to. The ecosystem has grown so much in the X amount of time that it has existed. So, just keep your eye on it. New solutions are coming. Existing solutions are being made better. And I'm sure a number of new participants are going to appear between now and whatever time in the future. It's just a really exciting time overall. I'm excited to be part of it, so keep your eye on it. just stay up to date. Do maybe build a solution yourself. You be the soon you want to see. There's a couple interviews, whatever, where people say that, but you got to get to work yourself too. You gotta make the changes that you want to see take place in the world, in the blockchain ecosystem. So don't think that if you might think that you can't do much to help out, like, I'm just gonna say that it's not true. You have a skill set that you bring to the table. I'm sure BSV, some company within the space, the protocol in general, can benefit from having you do whatever work it is that you do on it. So keep your eye out for opportunities like that. And if you don't know how to do that, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll help you find that if we need that to take place. So don't be afraid to get involved.
Great. And one last question: how do you see the fallout? What do you think is going to happen with the fallout? What kind of dominoes do you think are going to fall? Effects they're going to have?
So I guess when a fallout takes place, it's going to affect everybody. I don't think we're going to go unaffected by it, but I think it goes back to the resilience thing I was talking about before. That there's going to be bad actors are going to be flushed out. There's going to be a sort of flush, but because we are the blockchain where businesses are building, that's being adopted by governments, that has the technical side of things in place where, you can build your business today. It's not like the protocol is going to change in this way in the future that makes it unusable. I think resiliency-wise, progress-wise, future-wise, that we're the only chain that has the longevity, the ability to have that future that other chains don't have. So don't think that we won't be unaffected when markets flush or something. They say BTC sneezes and the market catches a cold, because there's gonna be areas or a point in time when it does get flushed out. We will feel it, but I think we're just gonna come back in a way that these other chains aren't able to come back and persist into the future in a way where other chains are going to disappear, and it's not going to be either technically feasible or maybe it was just a bad solution on the other chain's part, but we're not going to have that problem. So I think people should have some confidence in that.
And do you think BTC will actually sort of catch a cold, or is BSV gonna be the venom?
I think there's truth in both of those things. I think we have to be realistic. When Binance, if and when Binance goes down, that's one of the biggest digital currency exchanges in the world. It's gonna have an effect on everything. BTC is just one of the most traded digital currencies. It's gonna be felt there for sure. But at the same, so I think that's one aspect of it that will have an impact. But you're right. The other aspect is that BSV is Bitcoin, and more people are wising up to that every day. It's Bitcoin as it was laid out in the white paper on day one. And those who are serious about building, it's still a small technical community in terms of engineers on all blockchain ecosystems. So, but eventually those engineers do end up on Bitcoin because it's the only thing that works. So there is an aspect of it too, where BSV is the venom, where it is this thing that has the potential to sunset other things. So both aspects are at play. One, regulators are going to crack down in a way that'll probably be felt on the most traded digital currency pairs the most. It'll have a trickle down effect. But at the same time, BSV is so useful, is being used in everyday life, that also has this value that is pushing these other blockchain networks, further away, like making them they're unfeasible. A lot of them you just can't build on them. So they both play their role.
Amazing. Well, I have to say that's been like 1 hour 32 minutes. This has been absolutely cracking. Like, I have loved this conversation. We'll definitely have to catch up again soon, because obviously I know you're going to be up to date with all the gossip and stuff. So it's always going to be good to catch up with somebody like yourself. Let's maybe put something. I tell you what. Let's name an event now where we can catch up again afterwards. You name it, whatever event you think is going to come, and I'll say, it happened. Let's put it in the diary. Let's do it.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting one. So maybe it would be fun to have a conversation after all this Binance fallout takes place.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay. Tell you what then. If the fallout of Binance takes place, before my little goal, then we'll have a word with you. Or my little goal is BSV getting to $1,200. Whichever happens first.
Hey, that works for me. But both would make me happy. So I'm open to it. We'll set it up and we'll get it done.
Awesome. Right. Well, Patrick, it's been absolutely amazing. I shall close the show and press the red button. Wish you all the best, and hopefully we can catch up soon. It's been great.
Thanks so much, and I also like to say first, thanks to everyone who's tuning in the audience. I mean, like I can't see whatever's going on, but thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to our conversation. And second, thanks so much for having me on the show, man. I really appreciate it. I enjoy sharing my insights. I enjoy learning from you. It's been great. So thank you for everything.
Yeah. Well, if you have any questions on like the fund, well, tell you what I might do. I might send you some of my own articles. You can have a read through those and let me know what you think. I've actually written quite extensively on Bitcoin, but I don't really have the audience for people to read it. But if you want to have a look through them, I'm more than happy to send you the link to all my mediums that I've written.
Send it. I love to learn, so it'll be good to there's knowledge everywhere. I'm sure I can learn something in every piece of it. So go ahead and send it over. I'm ready for it.
All right, mate. Well, I shall do that now. Right, I'll go and have my lunch, get a coffee, wave goodbye, and I shall catch you later.
All right, until next time.
Cheers,
I'm out of here.
See you later. Bye. Wow. That was awesome. Another one of Satoshi Talks in the bag. Absolutely loved it. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. There will be more and more guests on the show. So until then, catch you guys later. Get paid for posting your pics on Relica. Download the app now at www.getrelica.com. Get your tweet etched on Twitch, forever on the Bitcoin blockchain. Do it today at www.jointwitch.com. BuyBSV.live, the best place to buy Bitcoin SV online. Support independent content creators on micropayment platforms such as Streamanity, Twitch and Relica. We should profit from our data, not the large corporations who track, monitor and sell it. If you enjoy the Bitcoin content that I produce, please support me by heading over to www.sirtoshi.tv, where you can keep up to date with all the latest news, gossip and content as it's created. Thanks very much. To get started in Bitcoin, go to freebsv.com, where you can claim your free Bitcoin. Then head over to Twitter and follow @IamSatoshi, where you can take part in his very generous and world famous free giveaways. The future of advertising meets the power of Bitcoin at Tonic Pow. Get paid for posting advertising campaigns to your social media profiles. Go to www.tonicpowads.com.